So I've been thinking about getting a router. I don't use a router a whole lot, but I need one every now and then for some projects. So I figure I'm gonna go get a router. I was over at Lowe's looking at the routers. This router table combination was $149 on sale today. Came with the router and the table, so I figured why not. So basically I'm gonna unbox it and then I'll show you how to assemble it if there's any assembly issues. So as you can see here, we got a bunch of pieces and parts. Some screws, some washers, some nuts. But that's the chuck for the router. Came with the router, the table. So basically I'm gonna put this together step by step so you can see what you need to do it with. All right, so I'm not really gonna go by the directions. I am and I'm not. The directions on some of these tools are kind of confusing. Step one, it shows you taking the base on and off of the router. We don't need to take the base on and off because it came with the base on it. All we need to do is insert the chuck or the bit that will hold your router bits in place. So if you turn it around, open this little door on the back here. Turn the knob so basically your nut comes down through the bottom here. So we're going to actually raise this up as far as it'll go. Once we get that done, there's a hole on the inside there. The long tool here goes through that hole. That way you can hold the shaft in place. Take your wrench, pick it up off the floor. So once you're done picking your wrench up off the floor, loosen this nut. It's already loose because it came from the factory. You don't want to take it all the way off, but you need it to the point where you can get your insert in. Slide the insert in. That'll give you a place to put your bit. I'm not going to over tighten this. I just want to snug it up so it doesn't fall out. And then once we put our blade, whatever blades you're going to use in there, whatever cutting tool you're going to use, it'll go in there. Then you tighten the nut the rest of the way, keep them falling out. All right, so this piece is a board guide. So basically what you would do is go on the back side here, if you weren't mounting this to the table, loosen these up. Like so. This would just slide right into here. You would adjust the depth however far you wanted it. I'm not going to tighten it up because I'm taking it right back out of there. But let's say this was the board I was going to put the router on. Put it to the back of the board, and that would give me guidance so I don't go all over the place trying to do my route. So to put the table together, the first step is to put the switch on. The switch comes with two black screws, two nuts. Basically we're going to bolt it on, screw it on right here. So this is my second attempt at doing this. They made these screws a little bit too short for me. So try to get creative on how to get the nut started on the back. So I'm just going to push it in with my finger, start up the screwdriver. Again, it's definitely a tight little spot. Got big clumsy fingers like me, but you can get it in there. So we're going to put the feet on next. So if you look on here, there's two bolts that are in here at the top or on the side, two bolts on the bottom. We're actually going to take these bolts all the way out of the bottom. The two on the side we're going to loosen up. These two will slide down over that, then the bolts from the bottom will go through the table and then tighten back up when you get them in there. All right, so again, I've taken the bottom ones out. These I've loosened up. I'm going to shake it backwards so the washer and the lock washer fall back to the back of the Allen head. I'm going to put on a slight angle so the washers catch. Now, I'm not going to tighten this all the way up, but I'm going to snug it up to the point where it doesn't fall off just by hand. Now on the inside, you can see these lined up with our towers here. So we're going to drop the bolts to the other side and tighten those up. Now I just snugged those up. I'm going to go ahead and tighten this side. If you want to grab a different Allen wrench, this wrench that came with it works, but it's not the best tool. Normally I would have grabbed an impact and done this, but for some reason today, too lazy to walk 10 feet and grab the impact, so I'm going to do it by hand. So once I get these two tightened up, I'll flip it back over, Tighten these up now. And then we're going to repeat the other side. I couldn't stand it. I grabbed a 5/32 Allen wrench, so I just used that for a screwdriver for a thumb driver. But again, same thing. Shake it down so your washers are past the metal. It'll go. It's being stubborn. There we go. Slide them up on there. And this is not the most well balanced thing in the world, so hang on to it so it doesn't get out of control on you. My hand tighten these just so it doesn't fall off. And the good part about it now, since I got both feet on it, I can just turn this upright and use the weight of the tabletop to put my top 2 screws in. So the next thing I need to do is attach the router to the base. First thing you need to do is take off this plastic plate. This plastic plate is to keep you from scratching up your wood surfaces. So we're going to remove that first of all. We're not going to use the same screws that came with it. There's 3 screws that came in that are flat on the top. We're going to feed those to the other side and tighten it up to that. So as you can see by the directions, it's not super clear on which way this goes, and you've got like 8 holes around the bottom of your router, so it's a little confusing on how to line it up on top of the table. So what I did is I took my plate, I lined my plate back up down here, took the plate and sat it back up on top and lined up my 3 holes. So that's where I'm going to screw into, so I know that my motor actually sits like this, if that makes any sense. So another thing that's a little confusing too, when you're looking at the bottom of here, when you look through here, you can see these screw holes here. What you can't see is this screw here underneath the handle on both sides. So basically what you want to end up with your adjustment gauge to the front where your switch is. So I'm going to line this hole up. I got a hole here by my handle and a hole in the bottom. So I'm going to go around the other side where I can stand up, lift the motor, and then tighten it in position. So after that, the next step would be inserting your cutter holes. Basically, it says to insert a insert 3/4 of an inch wider than the dimensions of your blade on top. So the next step is attaching the fence to the back. Basically, you want to loosen these up. These 3 holes here. So drop down these 3 holes. And then you can slide this forward and backwards to whatever dimension you need to make your cut at. All right, so I want to attach my guides now. As you can see, these things go one way or the other, so it's more of a push, and it keeps it from pushing back in the opposite direction. So basically, we want these to go the direction of our board. And as you can see here, the arrows are pointing this way, the arrows here are pointing this way. So we want to take the carriage bolts, drop them down through the holes, and then just snug them up. You will loosen this and tighten this depending on the thickness of your board, and that keeps your board from working itself or walking out on you. Now the back ones, you have to take them off of the guide. Same thing, we want the board, we're going to push the board through this way, so we want the feathers going that way. So I'm going to point it downward. We'll take the nut off, feed the carriage bolt through the back, washer, and tighten these up. So then the last thing you have is your pusher. So your pusher goes in here, So if you're going to do let's say you're rounding a corner over something, you're going to use your pusher. You just loosen this up, remove it. If you want to store it, you can come out and you can put it back on the back side here. Use it on the other side to keep your board flat. Again, you're not going to be able to push this through, obviously, if you have this in the way. So it depends on whether you're feeding it through with your hand or if you're actually going to use the pusher to push it through. All right, so the last thing you want to do is plug your router into the power outlet here. So that's plugged into the back of here. The table itself, this power supply gets plugged into the wall. You're going to turn the router on so it stays on basically all the time, and use this switch here to turn it on and off with.